Hey, what up? This is Joe Gethugu, your Baltimore lawyer, and today I wanted to talk about mold in uh, rental units, whether it's a townhouse, apartment, or anything of that sort. So, oftentimes when we get the call, the tenant has had a mold problem for a couple of months, and has informed the landlord, who either has simply ignored the calls, right, and the notice about, hey, I think I have mold, can you come check it out? And they simply get ignored, or if they come out, they simply do a substandard inspection, right? Basically, let's call it a fake inspection, right? We're in the age of using the word fake to describe everything. So it's fake inspection, right? They look around, they don't do a whole lot in terms of actually trying to figure out if there's mold, and this typically is done by the apartment complex through their own maintenance personnel, right? The everyday guy, not really a mold specialist, just one of the maintenance guys there. And then they say, hey, there's no mold, right? And they leave. So the client often continues to smell the mold, and then, and if obviously mold is left unchecked, it grows, right? It continues to spread. So eventually, it's on surfaces where it's easy to see versus behind the walls, for example, or in the often you see in the window. If you have a window AC unit, that could be a real trap, because there's water coming from the outside getting into the unit, that kind of thing. Or it could be in the closets, where you can get mildew in there, and then that develops into, given the right conditions, because of the moisture and the lack of air circulation, may turn into mold. So they've done, the tenant is often exasperated, and and oftentimes it's really difficult when there's children involved, because they're the first to be impacted, right? And of course, the parent will tell, hey, my child's having breathing problems all of a sudden, especially at nighttime, and they're coughing a lot. And then oftentimes, by the time they come to us, the child's already been to the hospital a couple of times, and they've basically said, hey, we think this is what's going on. And even after that, the landlord simply ignores the calls. And it's so common, it's really ridiculous, right? For example, I just settled a case involving a very young family, where with two children, in what would be to me a relatively nice neighborhood in the White Marsh area here in Maryland. And the parents in that case det- recognized that the children were having difficulty breathing, right, especially at night, and they couldn't really figure out what was going on. So they started looking around, and then they started smelling the mold, right? So they contacted the apartment leasing office on multiple occasions, and was simply ignored, right? Then eventually, after multiple times of taking the children to the doctors, they got the doctors to write a letter saying, hey, listen, we suspect the mold is aggravating the health condition of these children, and you guys ought to do something. So when the apartment leasing office got the letter, finally someone took it seriously, and then sent a representative to a maintenance personnel to check the apartment out, right? And in the process of doing so, they documented all this mold that this particular family had told them over and over again was in the home. And there was no guesswork to this. It was logical that mold could have developed. And here's why. Water had been dripping from an upstairs bathroom onto the ceiling floors down below, and you could see that water in the living room, in the kitchen, and sometimes in the hallway downstairs. So there was all the indications that, hey, you ought to inspect this, right, behind these walls, to check to see what's going on, right? But they simply would not do it. You know what I mean? And I guess, sometimes a cost issue, that kind of thing. But when lives are on the line, right, companies and entities like this ought to do the right thing. And I think that's the power of an attorney getting involved, right? With the minute I got involved, all of a sudden, right, it's like a switch flip, right? They were taken seriously. They were given the opportunity to move to a new unit, and on top of that, they were compensated for what they had to go through. And that's really the one of the joys of being in this business, is that oftentimes you can make a difference in people's lives in an immediate and impactful way. So in that case, we're talking about a young family with young children. I mean, children, one of them was under 2 years old, just having a hard time breathing at night because of this mold exposure. And no one believed them. All right? And then you get involved and you make it right. That's the beauty of being an attorney. It's not always the case that you get to be so impactful, but when you do, it sticks with you, and that is one of the reasons why doing this every day and meeting the clients that I meet and the people that I've helped is a real passion for me, and I continue to believe that that we can do more good. In this world, in each, each one of us in their respective, areas in whatever you're doing, and then I can do it from my perspective in what I'm doing. Again, my name is Joe Githuku. I'm a Baltimore lawyer. 410-849-95.